Hi, my name's Danny Ray. Welcome to Project 52. Today I'm going to share with you the story of the day I lost my biological father and 7 lessons I learned during that season. I hope they encourage you, inspire you, and help you to make it through, to strive on in the midst of difficult times. I want to talk to you about the day my father died and give you 7 things that I think can help you if you're in a similar situation or in a time of grieving or just a difficult season, maybe for a friend, that you're able to help them through. And so let me give you the relationship with my father. So my father took off when I was about 4 years old, and I would ask my mom, where is he? Where did he go? And she would say, oh, he's probably in jail somewhere. Oh, he's probably off with some other woman, things that didn't make sense to me at the time. At 18 years old, I had a dream. I had a lot of childhood dreams of, my father and I reuniting and everything being great. And so I had another one of these dreams, and I asked my mom about it. She sat my brother and my sister down, and she told me that my biological father, he was in prison for some pretty horrendous crimes. And so at that time, I remember crying, and I remember just being really hurt and kind of a reality check. But the thing was, is at 17 years old, I had given my life to Christ. And I filtered my life through the scriptures, through what I believe God was speaking to me. And the first thing I felt like I needed to do was to write him a letter in prison and let him know that God has forgiven me much, that God could forgive him much. And it would be another decade or so before I would see him again, and we would go through the process of, it was a difficult time to really forgive him and then ultimately to reconcile. We thought he would pass away. He had had 2 heart attacks within 6 months. He lasted another 8 years. And so I kind of knew from the day I met him that he was going to die, and I thought it would be easier than it was. But it was far more difficult than I could have imagined. And those 8 years that I got with him really became just sweet to my life and really meaningful. And I want to share the day that I found out that he died, some of the lessons that I learned, some that day, some that week. And I also just want to say that I had the privilege of having who I call Dad, who is my dad, a stepfather that was amazing, and still have him in my life. And so if you know me personally and I say my father died, it's not the man I call Dad, who is my dad, but my biological father. So here's the first one. The first one is this: God orchestrates miracles. The summer my biological father passed away, I was home for about 24 hours. I had 50 shows that summer. I was home for 24 hours. In that 24 hours, I wanted to be with my family. We were going out to see a movie. I got a phone call from the doctor, and I knew right away what the news was, and it just brought tears immediately to my eyes. Had he called 5 minutes later, I would have been in a movie. My phone would have been shut off. But I believe God orchestrated that time so that I could drive down to San Diego, which is about 2 hours from my house, be there with him, pray over his body with my family, and put him to rest, and then the next morning get back on a plane and go to Kentucky. The thing is this, is we don't know the circumstances that will surround the death of family members, but I know for certain that God does. I believe God orchestrated a miracle for me to be home for that 24 hours, that phone call I got from the doctor 5 minutes before, and for me to be with my family for a few hours before I'd be off to the next show. God can orchestrate a miracle for you as well. The second thing is this: grief is like a psychotic merry-go-round. We want to say like it's stages of grief and this is what you're going to feel first and then this is next. But I don't believe anybody has any idea how you will deal with grief. It's more like you're just all of a sudden you're going around and you get flung off in one direction and you're just like, how did I get here? Why am I crying? Why am I eating a donut and in tears? And it reminds you of that time you had a donut with your father, or whatever the situation is. Right? Is we just don't know exactly how grief is going to affect us, and we need to be okay with that and rest with that and know that God's going to carry us through. The third thing is this: everybody deals with grief differently. I remember people coming up to me and they would tell me how they grieved, and I remember thinking, well, that's not how I'm grieving right now. But I was thankful to hear their story, to hear where they've been and the journey they've been on. And I would just encourage you, as people share with you, is to soak that in and to let those stories impact your own journey, but to know that you grieve differently. The person next to you might. Even as a family, each family member might grieve differently, and that's okay. The fourth thing is this: don't be too sensitive to the stories or the advice that people give. There will be people that give you terrible advice. People, they came up to me and they're like, yeah, it took me a few weeks to kind of work through, but after a couple weeks, you'll be okay. After a couple weeks, I wasn't okay. I was still deep in grief and struggling in pain. God could use the advice of people that share things that you might feel like are ridiculous or you wish that they didn't share. You can still make it through and hear them out and know that they mean well, that they have great intentions, and that they're really just trying to be there. And sometimes people just don't know what to say, and that's okay. Number 5, know that God is with you. I remember just the overwhelming feeling as I drove down to see my father for the last time, and the thing spinning through my head. But then one thought kept coming, and that's that God's with me, that he will never leave nor forsake me. And I felt lost. I felt like nobody was with me. I was in the car on my own, but God is with us. No matter where you are in your grief right now, God is with you. The 6th thing is this: don't give up. Seems simple. It's not. Don't give up seems cliche. It might be, but we have to press on. We have to keep going. I would encourage you to read through the book of Philippians. In there, Paul talks about how he pressed on in the midst of great adversity. He pressed on in the midst of prison. He pressed on in the midst of suffering. He pressed on toward the prize for which God called him heavenward. Right? Is God's calling us heavenward, and we need to press on and not give up. God has a plan. He has a story for you in this season and through this season. The last thing is this: make every day count. Make every moment count. Every time I get a chance to be with my family, especially right after that, I just try to make the most of every one of those moments, knowing that this might not be forever. There will be an end to our time here. There will be an end to our journey. And I would encourage you, make the most of your time with your family members, with friends, the most of your relationship with God every day. This is the only day we have. Make it count. Make the most of it. I want to conclude with this. If you're grieving right now, if you're suffering, if you're in the middle of a loss, know that there's a family member, a pastor, a friend that wants to hear your story, that wants to be with you through that struggle. And if for whatever reason you don't have anybody, or you feel like you don't have anybody, know that God is with you and he will bring you the right people at the right time. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for listening to my story. May God bless you and use you in amazing ways to build his kingdom. May you experience his grace in the midst of loss, and may you experience more and more of his love. Thank you for watching.